Ooh, we're up. That was quick today. Lucy Pearce, good morning.
Hi, Alex Louise.
I'm a bit excited about today. I'm just going to let people know why I'm excited about today because I'm like, who's Lucy Pearce? Well, I'm going to say who you are to me, and then people can, and then I'm going to say especially why I want you on here today. So I had what can only be described as a series of relationship car crashes, including a marriage that ended in divorce. And I kept doing the same thing again and again. And then I came across you. And now I'm happily married with 2 children, living my dream life. And that's a very short way of saying you literally changed my life and did the work with me that I just didn't. And I'd done lots of work before. For anyone listening going, oh, okay, fine. I'd done lots of work. I'd been to lots of places. I'd had lots of coaches. I'd read lots of books. And I knew exactly what I was doing. And it didn't make the difference. And I did the work with you. Oh, I'm going to get emotional now, right from the get-go. I did the work with you. And now I'm married with 2 children and living my dream life. And I will be forever grateful for that. And that's life-changing beyond. And I literally am getting emotional. I'm glad I've got tissues. And now I'm building my dream business life with you every week because you still coach me. And it's miraculous to have you in my life. And I've known you for a few years now, and you know lots.
How many years is it?
Owen and I have been together. Charlie's 4, so plus 9 months, so nearly 5 years. Yeah. Owen and I have been together because we had children very quickly. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say 6 or 7 years.
Yeah,
I reckon. Yeah. 6 or 7 years, and so you know a lot about me.
Uh-huh.
And I get to hear little glimpses when you're coaching me of like little snippets. I'm like, oh, I need to know more about this. So although we've known each other for a long time, I don't actually know who Lucy Pearce is in the sense of your history. And I'm fascinated in that. And I'm fascinated in hearing from you in a way that we don't hear from you when you're coaching me about why you do what you do, what's made you so effective, what your beliefs and passions and all of that are. So I'd like to go on a magical mystery tour into it's like this is your life, Lucy Pearce. I'd like to do that. And because I've got a podcast, I get to be a nosy bugger and just ask all sorts of questions. So
great.
Apart from being one of the people that is pinnacle in changing my life, mm-hmm. and an amazing coach who runs transformational seminars for an international company, mm-hmm. and has her own coaching company who does help working with, I'm going to say individuals in the main. Is that correct?
Well,
what you do. Do you want to let us know what else you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I do work with individuals, what I call one-to-one guided journeys, which is what you're on.
You just didn't.
I know you call it coaching. I call it a one-to-one guided journey. And one of my superpowers is what, in business terms, what I call being a creative futures consultant. So one of the things that I'm passionate about and fascinated by is expanding how people think, expanding what's actually possible in the world, in individuals' lives, in community, in society, in government, in being human. This being human, what is it? How does it work? And how can we contribute to the well-being of each other, ourselves, and the planet? Like that.
I didn't realize that what I was on. That's exciting, isn't it? I thought I was just trying to sort my relationship car crashes out.
and you could call it any ways. It's like, how I see it is, it's like they're portals that we go through and enter into new worlds and imagine what might be possible. And from that magical land, something new becomes possible that neither of us imagined before we started speaking to each other. And you're the creator of it. And I'm the guide alongside you.
I like that description. I knew it was good. Now I'm like, oh, even better than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And so, I'm even more excited now. So let's go backwards. Where would you like to? I'd like to know. So that's where you are now.
Yeah.
And that's what you do with people. What got you to today?
Well, first of all, I got born. That was where it started. I incarnated into this life. And who knows, excuse me, let me just switch my phone off. And who knows how that happens? I certainly don't. So there I was, a little gurgling thing. And I guess there are some different things that happen in life that impact us. So one of the impacts in my life was my mum died when I was 5. And then I got a new mummy, a stepmummy, Eileen, who raised me. And I'd say that experience, I don't know if you've heard it's like that experience gave me my life. And what I became really interested in is getting the world of little people. So as an adult, children really matter to me. That we get who they are. They don't necessarily have language to communicate, and that we find ways in which we can get the experience of our children such that each little person experiences belonging, being loved, and being championed for exactly who they are. And we provide an environment for them to thrive in.
That's
one part
magical, right? That like even actually just saying that, sitting here as a parent of a 2 and a 4-year-old, there's a whole world where that's what we strive for, and then there's a whole world of
shut up and do what you're told.
The day, the stress. So I love that's like that you champion that for children, and I kind of get that in your coaching, and that I've never explicitly heard you say that.
And in a funny way, us adults are very like little people.
What do you mean? I never have tantrums. What are you talking about?
Exactly. So providing an environment for people really to thrive and belong.
And so that people get a sense of so I'm just going to say it badly. You're complete with your childhood and everything that's happened to you, and there's a whole world of quote unquote story behind it, just so that people get it from a what happened side of things. So your mission to get children to be heard, is that because you felt like you weren't, or where do you think that came from as a child?
Well, I certainly didn't have a way to express what was happening, my experience as a little person. And I think in a sense, it doesn't matter what the event is, but when we experience not getting gotten, then we're left with something. And part of my early life was in compensation. There's like that shouldn't have happened. Everything's all wrong. So I spent a lot of my early life trying to right the wrongs of the world. And, just to get it said, that's complete for me now. One of my dearest human beings in my life invited me to fall in love with the moment that my mum died. And I accepted their invitation after some considerable consideration.
I was going to say, so how did they, so, and when they first invited you to do that, you didn't want to do that. Was that just
what happened was they said that, and I really looked. And what I saw was that's what had happened. So me railing against that shouldn't have happened would give me a life of railing against things and being upset and not being willing to be with life as life shows up. And then in being with life as it is, there's a tremendous peace. Something that I couldn't even have imagined for myself. So it's not to suppress feelings. It's not to change my experience. All of that happens. And that's the fact. Mum died is the fact. And I'm complete with that. And it was one of the events that shaped my life. So when you said, what's brought you to who you are today? That's like getting born's the first thing. Probably having a brother and sister is the second thing. Which I didn't. Then that, if mum dying, that event is the next thing. And having a mum, my mum Eileen, who raised me, it's the next thing. It's like, wow. So there are the gods, and they seemed, as when I was a child, the adults seem like all powerful. They're like gods and goddesses. They're like, what they say is law. And then in growing up, for many of us, we begin to, particularly when we go to nursery or school, there are other people who begin to come into our life, and we challenge our parents. Because it's not a unilateral relationship anymore. And then there's how we relate to ourselves and the outside world, our immediate family, and then beyond our family.
And what would you say to people listening who can't imagine? I can really resonate with it because of Chris dying in a car accident. My brother, for people who don't know, died when he was 28. And and I feel like that about that. It's just complete. It was everything that it was, and everyone that was there at the time knows it was really hard, and it's okay. And sometimes when I say that to people, they're like, but what? But how can it be? It's it's almost like that fighting against the what is. What do you say to someone who's listening now, who is dealing with something that they're like, it shouldn't be this way? So it could be someone dying. It might be the cat was sick on the carpet this morning. Like, because what you said earlier, I think is really important to mention. You said it doesn't really matter what happens, and it doesn't really, does it? Because it's like the cat was sick on the carpet and we stood on it on the way down the stairs, or mum died when I was 5. Completely worlds apart in how we could justify being upset, but actually it's just there's something that happened that we're disagreeing with it being okay. Like, it was not okay for your mum to die, or it wasn't okay for the cat to be sick on the carpet. So people listening, whatever your version of this shouldn't be this way from in any sense, what do you say to people who are listening to this going, really? Can I be all right with that? Can that be complete, to use our word? Can we be fine with that? What do they do? Like, how do they start on their journey if they've not ever had coaching before?
Good. Well, the first thing I'd say is that there's, in the 2 examples that you've given, the degree of impact is what distinguishes the 2 things.
So
I think in answer, so to have utter compassion for your emotional reaction to things, your emotional response to things. And there are different ways we respond to things. So there's outwardly and inwardly, and then the deep freeze. So there are, and no response is the right response. You simply have the response you have. And often, there's a whole world being written about grieving. So it's a process, and to have compassion with the process. And if you're massively raging and angry, nothing wrong. That's simply you expressing your sadness. So then how you manage that, or if you retreat into the world and become depressed, again, nothing wrong with that. You're simply experiencing your emotional and sometimes physical and certainly mental response to something you hadn't imagined happening has happened, or something you didn't want to happen has happened. So then the second piece, well, how on earth? The thing that makes the biggest difference to me is to expand from being an individual to being the universal, or God, or the multiverse, or the divine, or the sacred, or the goddess, or like that. So I think for most people, it's clear that there is something bigger than us. If you look up into the sky and imagine where it ends, that would be an opportunity to discover, oh, what's happening? Where does that end?
Yeah.
And being willing to hand over to a higher power, whatever that is for many, many people profoundly relieving. Not handing over in a way as I'm no longer responsible for life, but actually handing over and saying, I don't understand this. Please take care of this.
And then trusting what shows up, or seeing what happens.
It depends what you're up to in life. I think one of the most exciting parts of being alive is having a game on. And it's kind of, the events that are difficult for us give us the capacity to go beyond what we know. So in failure, much as we all try to avoid it, that's where we discover where our limits are. And in discovering our limits, something new becomes possible. When we operate within our limits, we're constrained, or we're within those set parameters.
And it's almost like parameters we don't realize, right? So when everything's fine, we're actually in the proverbial comfort zone and it feels fine, but actually the irony is we're actually in a prison of some sort and not an expanding.
Or not, or within the comfort zone. It's not, if somebody wants to stay in where they're comfortable, there's nothing wrong with that. And then the growth and development is being willing to step outside of that.
I remember when I was in my garden flat and I was definitely in my comfort zone and I didn't have to work anymore. And I had Daisy, my dog, and I was going to get chickens. And And I remember having a conversation with you, and I was like, no, I'm good. I could live the rest of my life like this. And then I remember you laughing at the time. We'd worked long enough together that you could just pretty much just laugh at me, and I could laugh too and go, why is she laughing at me? But I don't really understand, but she knows something that I don't yet know. And then a few months later, I was like, I'm really bored. I need to do something.
Yeah.
So and it's proverbial when people come to me to talk about money, they're like, I just want to, drink margaritas on the beach. And it's like, yeah, great. That's going to be about a week. And then what are you going to do? Oh, yeah. I think what's good that I'd like to share at this point for people listening as well is that something that you taught me in this last year, which is talking about, new worlds and things opening up, is that I used to think coaching and therapy and, personal development world, whatever you want to call it, I used to think it was to get fixed, and that because something was wrong or because my life wasn't working. And so it must have been, it was maybe only a year ago, maybe less. I remember having a conversation with you going, no, everything's good. The comfort zone was back. I was like, no, everything's good. We've got my year's plan. I know what I'm doing. I don't know that there's any need for any coaching. And I think you laughed at me again in a loving way. We have laughing with me. Just for anyone listening, I don't want you to think that Lucy's just going to laugh at you if you start working with her. We've been together for 7 years, and we've laughed at all sorts of things that most people probably wouldn't laugh at. So there's a whole world there of it's okay. And then I can't even remember what you said, but you said some stuff and I was like, yeah, okay, let's keep going. And then like the last year has just been mind-blowing, because actually what we've worked on is expansion and what's next and all the whole world of it. And I think it's just really important for me to share that at this point, so people listening again just go, oh, it's like it's a thing for everything. It's not just, there's anyone listening, like, you're not broken. There's not, like Lucy's already said several times, there's nothing wrong. And then there's life working and excitement and expansion and what it takes to get over those things, to get to the next proverbial level, which is not really a level because we make it all up, which I'm starting to, the more I do this work, the more I realize how kind of ridiculous human beings are, which is probably why we spend a lot of time laughing, which is very freeing, because then actually when stuff's going wrong, it's just like, oh look, life's working.
This is what life working looks like.
This is what life working looks like. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in, so there was a load of stuff, your mum dying and that whole world. And then your friend, what you said was your friend said to you, that was
that was sometime later. So
how much later was that, and what happened in the gap?
Great. So let's go to the gap. So then there was a point as a teenager which is quite a big jump. So I was born, mum died, got a new mum. We moved from area. I went to different schools, and I had this moment where I was interested in people and interested in life. And so there were two things. I looked at how my parents lived, and I thought to myself, is this it? Is this all there is to life? It looked like, it's funny because it looks a bit like my life now, but it looked like my dad went to work. I didn't know what my dad did. It was like I knew he was a PhD lecturer at a place at the time that was called Cranfield College of Aeronautics, I think, became the Cranfield Management School. And so dad did that. And then mum took care of us and cooked, cleaned, grew food. And then at the weekends, they went out, and we'd go out and we'd do the shopping. And that was what life seemed to be from where I looked. And I was like, there must be more to life than this. And then I talked to anybody. I remember this talk I had with my mum had a cleaning lady, called June, and I had a talk with June, and I said to her, do you and your husband have sex, June? Because she occurred to me as old, and I was very interested in sex at the time.
Brilliant.
And she said, we do, but I don't really enjoy it very much. I usually think about something else, what I'm going to cook for the Sunday lunch or something like that. So it kind of reaffirmed my thought that life was about.
Is this it?
And so then I engaged in all kinds of, how to say it?
Rebellion? I'm just thinking about my life. I did a lot of rebellion.
Yeah, it was like trying different things. So, you know, there was a kind of drink culture. My brother and my dad would go to the pub, and that kind of more than perhaps any of my mum and my sister. But that was kind of there. So I thought, you know, to be a grown up, what was cool was to go to the pub. So I took up drinking. And then in the pub, I met people who took drugs. So I took up drug taking just as a weekend thing, really. I don't think I was ever addicted to anything. And then after a while, and I was a gardener, I left school and became a landscape gardener. And where I lived, Milton Keynes was built. So there was a lot of gardening to do. It was called Milton Keynes City of Trees. So I planted hundreds and thousands of trees.
Wow.
What would happen is the diggers would come in. Owen would enjoy this bit. The diggers would come in. They'd scoop out the earth and make a spoil of subsoil either side. And then they'd tarmac. I guess they'd put some rubble and stuff down first. Then they'd tarmac over it. And that was how the roads were built. And what we did was slip plant whips, which is tiny little young trees, into this grey subsoil. So you'd have like a stick with a little bit of root on the end, and you put your spade into this grey blue clay, push it forward, stick the rooty stick down the back of it, kick it in, because there was no soil, it was all just clayey, and then move on to the next one. What was miraculous is the whole thing worked. Like trees grew from these little sticks kicked into the clay. Unbelievable. So that was, I did that for a couple of years. I had a motorbike accident. I had a broken leg for a year.
Oh, gosh.
That was, oh, gosh. And then I went to a agricultural and horticultural college. And there I got a job in the States. I got my green card and went to work in Oregon. And then after a certain amount of time working there, I decided to hitch around America. So I jacked in the job, jacked in the course, hitched around America. And had extraordinary adventures. Just saw wilderness like I'd never imagined before. And that gave me more of a sense of perspective, like how tiny I am. Yeah. And how vast the land is. It also gave me my first experience of different cultures. So when I was going to America, I thought, oh, well, it's just like England. We speak the same language. And I discovered it isn't. There are very many things that are similar, but a different culture. And where I worked, there was a lot of what was at the time was called wetback labor, which was Mexican immigrant workers. Okay. Which I also didn't know about. So I had some kind of awakenings there. I was horrified that as an English student, I earned more than a Mexican worker who, by the way, worked about 10 times faster than me. Yeah. And then I discovered one of the Mexican workers had married an American woman, and he was charging his peers to bring them to work. So he'd immediately become the kind of what I had as the wrong at the time as the wrong thing. So that was a part of what had me ditch the job and hitch off into the world to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And discover what else existed. I was adventurous and very naive would be one word, and trusting would be another word. But like spontaneous. I was like, okay, let's do something different here.
Yeah.
And go without really planning any of it. That's the thing of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But then there's an adventure to that, isn't there? There's a whole world of seeing what happens and trusting that everything will be fine. That that's a big deal to do that. And like you say, there's an optimism and a naivety to it, and actually what comes out of it is also amazing.
And then a breaking up of the opinions, views that I had of things. I hooked up at one point with some bikers, and I was scared actually. And they said, hey, well, come and stay overnight, and the tomorrow we'll go and I'll take you out into the wilderness and we'll show you take you to this uncharted lake. And I was like, hell yeah. And then I was like, oh, they're both
gonna die.
So I went back to this beautiful kind of cabin in the wilderness, and the guy made handmade beds from wood, and we went out the next day with about 6 people and in this 4-wheel drive thing, and we jumped over things, and it was just like thrilling. And then when we got out of the vehicle and started walking into the wilderness, he was like, oh, he was a tracker, so he was like, these are deer's hooves marks, and we got to the lake, and it was just stunning. So the sort of, there was a magic there, but there was also, the whole thing of a bigger universe taking care of me. I must have been about, I don't know, maybe 18, 19, something like that. Yeah.
In my head, I was like, oh, you're probably like 25 by this point. So I'm glad you cleared that up and said what the age was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah.
So
and there's a whole world called what we think bikers are.
Yeah.
What they were, all of that. Like you say, expanding into what, Yeah. So we're at 18, 19 at this point. You'll buy a lake with some bikers who aren't who we thought they might be.
And we lay out on there were beavers who'd made dams, and we lay out on these logs and swam in the lake, and there were these like salamanders that were kind of part gold. They had gold rims around their eyes, and they just dived down into the lake and then swam back up. I mean, it was just like it really was like a paradise on earth. Just extraordinary.
And where did you go next?
Well, lots of places. Crater Lake in Oregon. So I think at this point it becomes clear in my speaking, and also to say my connection with nature and the planet is massively important to me in all through my life. So yeah. So let's have a look. So then from America, came back. I was a bit of a loss. I didn't really know what to do. And went back into landscaping. And
during all of that time, because this is a time when we didn't have the internet and all of the rest of it. So did anyone know where you were? Were you in communication, or had you sort of said, sod you lot, back in the UK, I'm off, and no one knew where you were? What was the kind of situation there with family and friends?
Was when I wanted something, I'd phone home. Like money transferred out of my account.
Every parent listening to this is going, yes, I know how that goes.
Yeah. And then when I got back, my mum said, oh, I kept all your letters. And I said, oh, that's really sweet, Mum. And she said, yeah, both of them. So you could say I was off on my own trip at that point. for sure.
Mm.
But it was, you know, very different. I was off doing my own thing, and maybe every couple of months I'd be in communication, maybe every month, probably not every month, every couple of months.
And there's a level to which that's not abnormal when traveling before internet. I mean, when I went traveling when I think it was about 20, I think email was just coming in, but I didn't really know what it was. And I think I might have got Hotmail while I was away and started to, but generally it was just like I was not around. And so it's also
I think that, you know, at that, certainly for me at that age, I wasn't present to the rest of the world. Like my family would be wondering where I was. Didn't occur. I'd just been straight about it. Didn't.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
But now I understand.
Now you realise.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. No, I really resonate with that. I think I even said on Monday, where are we? It's Tuesday. Yeah, I even said yesterday, oh, this is what I used to do to people when people disappear. So I used to be I'd just go off and just think everyone would be fine. Like, what's the big deal? And now when I experience it from the other side, I'm like, oh, actually, maybe I did matter, and maybe people missed me because I miss people and they matter.
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
So you came back from America. How old were you then?
21.
And then what?
Well, yeah, I've had 3 iterations. So I've worked in gardening in some form or other, the creative arts in some form or other, and then in
guiding.
That's a very good, and brownies. No more. Yeah, in being alongside people, being interested in how we work and like that.
I love set. I've had 3 iterations. I love that.
Well, it kind of keeps it simple. I've never been much of a one for measuring and stats and dates, and it's much more. So, you know, I took one way you could say it is I took 10 years out before I went to university. So I came back, did gardening, and then at a certain point, I ran away to the circus. So I went to circus. Yeah,
I love that.
I went to circus. Well, not literally. I went to circus school in Bristol, which at the time was called full time, FWL full time, and was in St Paul's. And then myself and 4 friends set up a kids circus in a small railway works town in Milton Keynes called Wolverton, and that circus was called Madcap, and it came from an American guy's book who was called Reg Bolton, and he had a book called Circus in a Suitcase, and it was about running a kids circus, and that's what we did. So in the summer we tore around the school fetes and the like, and we ran workshops teaching stilt walking. I mean, I don't think we could do it now. We just tie the stilts on. We made the stilts and we tied them on with straps of cloth. That was how that went. We had unicycles and diabolos and juggling and acro balance and all of that. And it was a place that kids who weren't necessarily academic could come, and certainly kids who were naughty could come. And it, you know, one of the things that happened was it gave some of the young people who came, it gave them a new future. And there was one guy who all of us left at different points and did different things, apart from one guy called Leslie Jeffries, who died last year. And he kept it all going for years and years. So he would see the young people that I'd work with, and then he'd say, oh, I saw I don't know, Kelly, do you remember her? And I go, oh yeah. He'd say, well, she's doing this now. She's got 3 children. She's been married 15 years. It was amazing. It was like this, you know, family of young people that we'd made a difference to. And it was fun, you know. So that was my, and from there I started doing a bit of youth work. And then that was when I went to university. So I went to university when I was 29. I'm 62 now, so what would that be?
33 years ago.
Thank you. There we go. So I took 10 years out and then went and did a drama degree. And in the interim, so funny. Do you know, I very rarely say any of these things.
I know. That's why I was like, how can I find out about Lucy? I know I'll get her on my podcast and she'll share who she is and where she's come from.
So when I was at full time, one of the things that happened was some of my friends had a little site on the docks down in Bristol. So it was before all the regenerations. There was a little vehicle site and they'd set up a static trapeze in a warehouse. And I used to go down there some nights and then we'd get like scrap wood and have a little fire and get the kettle on the fire and sit round, and some people would be practicing and we'd have a bit of a sing or whatever we do, right? And we'd talk about life, the world and everything. Yeah. And it was so romantic. It was like, this is the life for me. So I decided that I was going to get a live-in vehicle. That was my next, whatever else, I was going to do that, because that was the way there was to live. I wouldn't be bounded by all these societal conventions. I could be a free spirit. Yeah. So fast forward, and I didn't have much money, wasn't a motivator for me at the time. And in fact, I had no money at all. Let's get straight about it. And somebody phoned me up and said, oh, there's this, this was like a magic thing that happened. And they said, oh, there's an audition. They're looking for tall women jugglers to make a commercial in Barcelona. Are you interested? I was like, sure, I'll go. And they said, come dressed like a housewife. So I said, okay. I was like, oh, I haven't got the train fare to get to London. How's that going to work? And I was walking along the road and there was a £20 note in the gutter. So I picked it up. That was my train fare to London. I thought, so I asked a couple of friends, I said, what do housewives look like? And they said, oh, they wear headscarves and aprons. I was like, well, I'm not wearing that. So I got I got a Mohican, head shaved either side. And I put on stripy black and white tights, like Doc Martens, and a little frou-frou mini skirt. And off I went. And then I sat in a queue with all these other people and went in at a certain point and juggled 3 objects. They were bits of wood. And they went, all right, we'll let you know. And they let me know. And I was one of the people they chose, despite my unhousewifely appearance. So we went, it was the funniest thing. That's another whole story. But we went to Barcelona, made this commercial. And how it worked is you get a lump sum. So it's not royalties on how often it's shown. So I suddenly had, I think, about 1,200 quid. I was like, that's my in. So I bought a truck. And it was a 3.5 ton Ford D series, and which has got one of those cabs that, like a Tonka toy. So the cab opens up like that, and the engine's underneath. It's like, I didn't know how it worked, but that was good enough for me. And then it was an old gas board box on the back. Yeah. So it had all this kind of metal in which they used to keep the gas tubes in. Yeah. And I was like I woke up in the morning and looked outside and I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? I was like, so I went and took some tiny tools to it and snapped them. I was like, well, this isn't it. And then gradually I found a place to work on it. And at the time there was some workshops, what were they called? Milton, they were the community wood workshops. They had all this amazing equipment in.
Yeah.
So I did stuff like went to an old cinema and bought the wood of the roof and put all these old bits of wood through a lathe so I could use them to line out the inside of the truck. So I converted this 3.5 ton truck to a living vehicle. It was basic, I can tell you, but
it was yours and you did it.
Exactly. So I pitched up at Exeter University, one of the Russell groups of universities, in my 3.5 ton truck. And I said, hello, where's the park up? And again, I noticed there was this sort of culture clash. Anyway, it all worked out. I found the most amazing place to live, which was next to a stream, and I could and looked out over the River Exe. It was just extraordinary.
Wow.
And did my degree, and that was that iteration. And I did a lot of community. One of the possibles is community art, community theatre. So that was something that interested me and something I'd done some of between circus school and doing a theatre degree. So you can see there's a kind of through line, which is kind of doing stuff, which I'm beginning to see, just like an adventure.
Yeah. And I think what's great is that what I love is that you had adventure and you went on it and it was okay. And what I love about you sharing your story, I imagine, because I don't know, but I imagine is that other people will hear your story and go, oh, that was cool. And oh, I did that. And oh, that's okay. Because there's a whole world of people going, go to work, go to school, go to uni, get a proper job.
Yeah.
In brackets, be fucking miserable, close bracket. And that's how you must live life. So I think it's, and you didn't do that.
No.
And you had an amazing time. And so many people think that, I have clients that are artists. I'm sure you do. And there's this whole world of the creative person who doesn't want to be pinned down with bricks and mortar and everything that society has, and yet has to interact with the world. And it's like that dance of what people think they should do, what you can actually do, how you can actually have it all and do both, and all of that world. So it's, it's, and there's I think what I love as well is there's so much that makes a life. And there's, everything that you've done to this day makes you who you are as a coach, as a person, as a human, as a, even when you're telling your story, I'm going, oh, that's why I'm so connected to Lucy. Because there's so many, the stories about going, drinking alcohol and then actually that turning into drugs and going off traveling. I mean, I didn't go for as long as you did, but I had, 3 months where I just went, fuck it. And off I went, and all I had was a plane ticket. And I just showed up at the airport that I'd landed in and went, right, what's next? And it's that whole, there's a lot of things that make sense now. Like when, it's really great to hear the story.
There's another kind of piece in the middle, which we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I notice is that having been in some ways not immersed in the life journey in a way that perhaps many people are, there's it gives an access to seeing it from a different perspective. And yet the human condition, regardless of the journey or the circumstances, is the same for each of us. So it isn't like my life was a wonderful, brilliant adventure without any downers. It was, as with every life, it's a roller coaster. There's excitement and misery.
Mm. Mm.
So it's all of it. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
But certainly, as you're hearing, not the regular 9 to 5 existence.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
And what did you do when you left? So you left uni.
Yeah.
Where were you at then, sort of thinking of life and what you wanted to do? Did you know what you wanted to do, or were you still kind of like, oh, where's the next adventure?
Yeah. So I formed a women's theatre company, and we worked for a year on a show which looked into, which was it was in the form of the nearest I could say is like an Icelandic saga. So we were interested in narratives, how narratives get told, and we wanted to, as ever, I'm a boundary pusher. I can hear it.
No, surely not. No, you've very small and quiet in your life, and never, broken any rules or challenged anyone.
Not at all. So as ever, we wanted to see what that would be like. So we created this show and performed it. I think the highlight of my theatre career as an actor and a producer of work was that we performed at a conference called the Women in Art Practice Conference, and we performed on the bill with a woman performance artist called Bobby somebody, I've forgotten her surname, who was utterly brilliant. And we performed at a couple of art centres around the place. And I also went and trained with a company called Grenland Free Theatre in Norway for a few months. And there was a project I worked a little bit with called goodness, this is such a long time ago, which was I can't remember the name, and it was a women's art and a women's theatre project in Wales. So, but an international women's theatre project. So it brought the best of women's theatre from around the world together. It was extraordinary. So that I played in that world over a few years. And then the next iteration was as a, you could say, an environmental activist. So I went to Salisbury Hill, which is on the outskirts of Bath and was one of the early road protest sites. And we made one of the first tree villages in the UK in a copse. And I lived there for some time, about 9 months, up a tree.
So where's the truck at this point? When did you lose the truck?
Well, the truck was still there. So people used that. I used that.
Yep.
And then at a certain point, the site was the copse was cut down, and the site was no longer a site, I suppose. I don't know what I call it, destroyed or like that. And that was that. I was like, I'm done here. That's it. I'm done here. I mean, it was quite, but again, it was a great experiment in community living. That's for sure.
And was there a world of how harmonious you thought it would be, and then what it was actually like, and the realities of living in a woodland and dealing with?
I mean, mainly it was harmonious. Actually, there were a lot of people who believed passionately in the same thing. So that was a great unifier.
Yeah.
And then there were just some completely mad people who did things like bought a couple of pigs and let them run free on the hill. And the pigs got into the food store and ate everything and destroyed people's homes, which were benders made out of tarpaulin and hazel poles and like that. So, you know, there was some extreme learning. And again, at the time, I became friends with, was it Belle Mooney and David Dimbleby? Were they married at the time?
Don't know.
I think and they had a daughter called Kitty.
Yeah.
And so somehow or other, I got friends with Kitty. She was about, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, something like that. And she went to a private girls' school, and she was really passionate. She loved the land. She loved the Salisbury Hill. And she didn't want the new road built. And she was really struggling with two worlds. So she was like coming and hanging
one
out
foot in each
with what her school friends kind of made fun of. And then, you know, she was worried about, I remember she said, do you think people think I'm a terrible snob, Lucy? And I said, not at all. I think we're really proud of you. But it was it was that whole kind of how we follow what's in our hearts in the face of no agreement. And it, you know, it takes something. So, and I was really proud of her, as was her mum, and I'm sure.
It goes against being in our tribe, doesn't it? When we go and hang out in another tribe. I mean, it's pretty ingrained in our being, isn't it? Of being the tribe. But then when we don't feel like we fit the tribe, it takes a lot.
The world of belonging.
And
then somewhere, if you don't belong to yourself, you can't belong anywhere. Maybe.
I would say I'm a paid up member of that club, and no longer, like, you know, I'm good now, but that's certainly what I did. You know, did a lot of running, thinking that a different place would make a difference, different people would make a difference, but kept looking in the mirror, and there I was.
That's the thing. You always take you with you. That's it. Always take you along for the ride. So that became quite a few years of my life that I was involved in environmental activism.
And so let's have a little detour, because it's really so I live in Newport in South Wales, and we have had a conversation in Wales since the 80s, and it could well be longer than that, called "We Need a Relief Road," because the M4 into Wales is it's basically like the M25. It's a constant car park because there's the traffic trying to get into Wales. We have tunnels, and it goes down to 2 lanes, so the main artery into Wales. Then it gets a standstill, which then has impacts across business, Wales growing, people wanting to come here, all of that world. And when you were just sharing that, then I was like, it's such an interesting conversation of, so there's the, like, you know, actually workability of a country, because this is like, you know, the main artery into Wales, and how does Wales function? And Wales within the UK is known as, you know, we've got massively deprived areas and all of that world. And then there's the conversation about conservation and nature, and I don't have the answer. This is why I want to talk about it. I have a foot in each camp. You know, I believe in farming and organic farming and permaculture and wilding and food that works and nature that works. And then I have a foot in the world of, you know, finances working and the world working and people's lives working. And it feels to me at the moment like the two are against each other, like it's one or the other, the way the conversation goes. And Wales has spent millions on this conversation and never got anywhere. You know, the consultations that have gone on, the fights that have gone on. Yes, we need the relief road, but the relief road basically ends up going through conservation land, marshland, destroys habitat like no tomorrow.
Yeah.
But then what it brings in and the possibility that it has, because what money can bring in is amazing for a country. And how, I don't know what the question is. What, from coming from where you came from and like literally camping to save a copse and then it being destroyed, which is, you know, how do we navigate this as humans? Like
the impact of that, what was called the road protest movement was a radical scrapping of the infrastructure plans for the UK. So if you look in the current context, where we're dealing with possibly, many people would say, the survival of our species and the planet, then, you know, Wales has done a good job. You could say. And then where there is to look is you can hear there's like an either or.
That's
mentality.
what it occurs to me like at the moment.
And that's pretty traditional for human thought. It's like, we're going to do this or are we not going to do this? And there are all kinds of things that are possible. So now that the impact is great enough on the world, we've been going in a particular direction. You know, cars came about because of the problem of horses in the streets of New York. And then, you know, we've moved we've moved up a level. So we've moved it from the ground into the air. It's like, oh, that's what we've done. So everything, there's an impact to everything. And part of, you know, it seems as though the world's getting faster and faster, or our human world is getting faster and faster. Let's get it accurate. And it's really just looking and seeing what the impact is and what we're actually out to create, which is, you know, a world where people thrive. And again, it's trusting that new sources of power exist, trusting that building passive houses that create the energy they use work. And then it's, you know, the implementation of it all. So I think the context is the biggest deal, which is thinking big enough to include all of it, which curiously involves consultation with everybody who's impacted, because we don't get the impact of, you know, if you go back to being a teenager abroad, looking only from my world, I didn't get the impact on my family of the 2 letters till my mum let me know. And it's no different with having, you know, how we organize ourselves, how we create power, energy, and then dealing with the kind of human condition of our propensity to look from our own wants and needs without taking a long range view.
And I notice in myself that there's an apathy there of like, oh God, it's so big. What the F can I do? And I also I went to summer camp a couple of weeks ago, which I told you about. And Liana, one of the speakers, she spoke about how the biggest destroyer of humans and the planet is actually apathy, because it's the just giving up. That's actually what it's game over, right? Because if I'm apathetic about that, I'm just like, oh, what can I do? What difference can I make? The government's so big, and the powers of, you know, dealing with conservation is so big, and no one wants to talk to each other, or everyone thinks that someone wins, someone loses. What can we do? And that, you know, God, if I feel that, and I'm pretty resourced and inspired, and I have you as a coach, and like, if I feel that, it's just, rampant in our world.
Yeah.
And then I guess maybe it's like, what game do I want to play and where do I go? And
well, it kind of brings us back to the universal.
mm.
So everything that ever happened has brought us to this point.
Mm.
And the idea that we are individual is kind of crazy. There's not, like, here we are, I'm on StreamYard. Somebody's invented that.
Yeah.
I'm on my laptop, which people from different countries made. Somebody packaged it, somebody marketed it, somebody unpackaged it and sold it to me. Then I'm using electricity from I don't know where. I'm sitting on a chair from wood made of oak at a table. I've got a watch on somebody made somewhere. It's like when there's no such thing as an individual. There's nothing that we do that's entirely ours. You know, when I was at a place called the Misty Glades with a very famous road protester, a young man called Swampy, we used to look together to see, you know, what what would be the least footprint we could make. And we came up with eating turnips from the local field over the winter, drinking scrumpy that the local cider made that we got jugs filled with. And it was and then, you know, I thought that composting ourselves would be the least possible, but apparently there's some, even that doesn't work. There's even some things that don't work about the breaking down of a human body. So we had some fun with it, and we looked from one extreme to another extreme. And there is, as far as I can see, there are no answers. Like, here's the answer, do this.
That's what I'm asking for. That's what I'm looking for. I'm like, just, what's the answer to this? Let's just get it done. And it doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. And the other thing that we do traditionally as humans is look for whose fault it is. And there's a way of viewing the world, which is really takes something, but this is what's happening on my watch. This is the world that's showing up right now. I've got something to say about that, or and then, as you say, it's choosing the game you want to play. And that expands over time. And it could be in creating something in the world, or it could be in who you get to be as a human being. So, you know, some people in spiritual communities are, you know, praying is the deal. Thinking kind thoughts is the deal. And then, you know, where you're looking now around supporting businesses, supporting agriculture, supporting land ownership, supporting how we grow and produce food, makes a palpable difference in the world to all the people that then get to eat that food. And then it's remembering that, you know, the people in Pakistan or Bangladesh that made your jumper kept you warm whilst you're doing that. And you kind of get we're in it together, which is both humbling and moving for me.
Yes, agreed. When you said that, like this and the computer and my jumper, and it's like, wow, yeah, right. That's the whole deal. It's like, really, and I just walk around thinking I'm just on my own in my house, and it's like, not really. Not really.
And then all the families that raised the people that made your jumper. I mean, it just, I could weep in being moved in the intimacy of our lives if we create it that way. In the give and take of it, in the
Yeah. Mm. Why did we detour? Oh, yes. You were talking about activism and environmental activism, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
So,
Yes, so that was an interesting few years as well.
And
And
what had you? So, was it the final that cops got taken down that you went, I'm done with this?
Well, I did,
Or...
and then a couple of people enrolled me into the Fair Mile, walking the route of the A38 road improvement scheme, which runs from Honiton to Exeter. And that was Stripey Richard and Swampy. So we walked that route a couple of times, and then before I knew it, we were back in business. And there was kind of, it's interesting, there was a kind of I had a kind of mythical identity in those days. So for many people, particularly women, who wanted to be a part of that movement and were raising their children, and it didn't feel appropriate to be in the thick of it, I became like a leader. So I was my road protest name was Angel, and I was like somebody in that movement. Yeah. So it kind of worked to go back into it, because I didn't really know quite what to do after I'd stepped out of it. And it became that when it was the Fair Mile Road protest site, that was really where I became more known. I became sort of the voice, one of the female voices of it, for sure. And when I left that particular iteration, it was really challenging, because having been a biggish fish in that smallish pond, suddenly I didn't know who I was or what I was for. That had, it was my life.
Yeah,
that was what I did. That's who I was known as.
Yeah.
I was in the press as that. So I had a little famous for 5 minutes thing with it. So there was a world, and then I was like, oh, now what? Which I guess is no different for anybody who's been in a particular career. I'm thinking of you here as a chef, and then you're like,
well, that's what happened to me as a chef. Total identity crisis when I gave it up. Everyone's like, yeah, you're financially free at 32. And I was like, I don't know who I am. So absolutely the same.
Yeah.
Just complete.
Yeah.
I mean, I called it my quarter life crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I hung out for a bit and did some more practical things. And then I returned to the creative arts. So I did a qualification as a dance movement therapist. And then I did a qualification as a solution-focused coach therapist. And then I worked with people for about 5 years. Oh, before I did that, so I worked with people, and then I worked for a government quango, which was called Care Services Improvement Partnership, and designed and provided services for families who had somebody with a mental health issue in the family. And that was extraordinary. So rather than viewing a particular individual as a problem, it's looking at the system, the whole. It's called systems thinking, so amazingly. So you're looking at the whole system of how that family operates.
Wow.
And if you change one part of it, the whole thing shifts. Or like that.
Yeah.
So I did that work for around, and then I moved from that to working in health promotion. So it's always been, it's kind of a between the arts and health promotion. So when I worked in health promotion, we made a documentary called Big Fat Cab Drivers, which was what the cab drivers wanted it to be called. And it was about overweight cabbies in Plymouth who we designed a program for called the I Love Life program. And they shared their journeys.
Wow.
It was cool. Amongst other things. So there's been like those 3 iterations: nature, and gardening, taking care of people in some way, our health, our well-being, and the planet, and the arts.
Yeah.
And that's, that's my home place, it turns out. So I write, I'm a poet, there are various other things that I'm up to. Yeah.
You said something to me the other day about when I might have this wrong, this is how I remembered it. Lucy's like, oh God, what's coming? It was something like, it's these things that you said that got me like, I need Lucy on my podcast. I need to know this. You said I think it was the Native American church. When I was with them, they used to think in terms of 7 generations, which has blown my mind. And I've brought it up with my clients. I'm like, if we thought about things in terms of the 7 generations, what decision will we make? And it's brilliant, right? And it's how it's so aligned with how you coach and how I coach. And it just, that gave me like another way to look at it. We've got a friend who lives in Germany, and he says, in Germany, they talk about 100 years. Like, what's the next 100 years in terms of business? And they plan for the long run. Yeah. And I don't know why in the UK, I don't feel like we have a version of that. I feel like we have a 4-year election cycle that just goes through to every.
Well, that's certainly at current, isn't it?
Yeah, we have a 4-year election cycle that seems to have integrated itself into every way we make a decision in the UK. And that it's probably not true. It's just how it occurs to me.
Yeah.
That like short-term thinking of, what shall I eat for dinner now? Not, I choose food in terms of how will I die at 140 in a snowboarding accident. Gives me a very different answer of what to put in my face today. It's like what I'd really love to put in my face that's full of sugar and all sorts of god-awful stuff. And then there's, if I want to live to 140 and die in a snowboarding accident, maybe this would be a better choice. And it literally changes the day to day. So there's 2 things. One is more about, gosh, if we all thought in terms of 7 generations. And before we go there, which is interesting, Native American church.
Yeah. So sure.
Again,
let's have a look there. So let's see. So some friends invited a Mexican Indian teacher. I think he's Mexican American Indian, that kind of area. As you can see, it's a long time ago, called Aurelio Diaz Tecpancali, and he became my teacher. They invited him over for the first medicine ceremony, I think, in the UK. Maybe there were others before. So obviously, what we did, obviously, is I joined some friends who were horse-drawn, and from Sidmouth, I think. They came from Oakhampton. They came from Yeovil, and I joined them in Sidmouth, and then we did a horse-drawn journey, like a pilgrimage, from in my case, Sidmouth to Oakhampton. And we had Amber the horse. We had one barrel top, which we had Tegwin, Vicky, Teg's daughter Elkanah, and me and Brian, whose horse it was. And then tagged on the back of that was another little barrel top that had two dogs and I think 4 chickens and a couple of goats in it. And we walked to with the menagerie to the site where the first ceremony was, somewhere in near Oakhampton. And it was quite extraordinary. That was the beginning of my engagement with that particular way of viewing the world, I suppose. And so how it worked is that you would go in, that we went, the first ceremony, we went in at about 6 o'clock at night, something like that. And there was this whole world, there was a design to it. So it was like a half moon altar made of earth, which had one half was painted red for the earth and one part was painted blue for the sky. There was a fire pit, and the fires was made out of 1 meter long, pretty straight bits of wood about that diameter. And they were put the fire is made of balancing one stick on top of the other, and where the sticks crossed and matched where the blue and the red hit up against each other, and that was where the sacred medicine sat, which was peyote. So the peyote button sat where the blue and the red met, and where the fire sticks intersected. I mean, there's a whole world of the design of it. And then you'd sit together. There was a water drum and a rattle, and you would pray and sing from whenever you began to whenever you ended. It's about 24 hours from memory. And you take the sacrament of peyote, which made you sick. Pretty much everyone would vomit. So there'd be like a sick pit that you'd dig, and there would be medicine men who worked the ceremony. And the design was you were sick in front of the fire. So you'd have a bag, you'd vomit, and then the people would come and take the vomit bag away and put it into the sick pit. And the cedar woman would throw cedar on the fire to cleanse whatever there was that you'd thrown up. Let's put it straightforwardly. And then, you know, it was utterly out of this world. And I became part of that little tribe of people in the UK. And then we did a vision quest over 4 years where you would go and sit up a mountain. So you'd do a ceremony. This was in Spain.
Okay.
That was like an amazing community living. So there would be people from different countries. And you'd go up the mountain. So you'd have a blanket, a tobacco, which was a corn husk with tobacco and herbs in, and a peyote button. And you would go up with that and pray. So that would be, you did, I think it was 3 nights, 5 nights, 7 nights, and 13 nights.
Wow.
And
were you on your own, or you did this as a group?
So you were pegged out into your little space on the mountain, but there were other people who were, you couldn't see anyone else.
Yeah.
But there were other people, and then every night the people on the ground would sing to you. They'd sing up to you. Thank you for your giveaway for the people. That's the prayers. And I became what was called a pipe carrier in that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And we also made a women's lodge. So a teepee, I made the symbol that went at the top of the teepee where the smoke goes out into the sky, which is how the prayers get out to Great Spirit. And I made a winged woman out of a deer skin that we stitched onto the top of the teepee. And it's the only place that I've ever been in my life where there was a cultural space assigned to women who were in their moon time. There was some extraordinary, like, if I talking about it, it's impossible, I think, to understand it. But the experience of it was life altering. So there was a prayer of gratitude for everything. There wasn't like every stick, every stone. There was a lot of praying went down. That's what I can tell. It was where I learned to pray. And when I came down after the 2 weeks up on the mountain, it's like you're born again. So one of the things that happens is you notice there's a rhythm and a pattern to life, a design to life. So it would be like when the sun's at that point in the sky, a little string of ants goes across that part of my patch, which normally we wouldn't be still. I certainly wouldn't be still long enough to see that. And then when you come down, it's like everything is utterly beautiful. You're like in an altered state. So it's like every human being, you're just like, wow. I remember I stayed with a friend in London when I got back, and he said, you know, I've never heard anybody be so kind of ecstatic over a piece of toast in my life. But it's like that. Everything is like you're present to it. It's like when you've had no distraction or stimulation, and you're looking at nature. I was looking at, the only thing I saw was there were some wild horses, there was a shepherd and some sheep on the opposite side of the mountain, and that was that. Birds. So, you know, color. Wow. Yeah. It was amazing.
And so you were what, food and shelter for this 2 weeks? Was there either? What was like? How were you?
No. So you had a blanket.
Yeah.
That's where one of the places I discovered how shallow I was, because there was a thunderstorm one night and all of us got soaked. And there was no, like, you had to stay up there. You could go down anytime you wanted. And I was close. I was so cold. Anyway, about 4 o'clock the next day, I saw this little band of people coming up. And they gave me you give a vow of silence as well. So they gave me a tobacco, so you could speak with a tobacco.
Okay.
And they gave me a blanket and took the wet one away, and I just cried. And I would have kind of sold my granny for that blanket. I was just desperate to be warm.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was one thing. And then in terms of, it was kind of hardcore. So you didn't have food or water for about 4 days.
Wow.
And then you got like an orange or something.
It was like the best in the world ever.
And also you just get what the mind's like. So it was 2 oranges. So I was like endlessly working out when I was going to eat each segment of orange. And what happened, unfortunately, was the second orange was one of those dry ones. I needed to conserve water, but I was just so disappointed. My whole life was predicated on when I was going to eat this orange. I tried licking moisture off a leaf, but it was so dusty, it just kind of was even worse. It's not a good look, I tell you.
Wow.
But it gave a view, a different perspective on life. Like the not taking anything without requesting it first and then saying, being appreciative afterwards. I'd never put that together. One of my offerings is I run gratitude courses. People go, oh yeah, I make a list of 3 things. Yeah, I've done that. But it touches in somewhat deeper. And it's amazing. It really is an access to happiness in life. And I think Einstein said, once the kind of life you get to live is given by whether you have a friendly and benign universe or one that's not for you. And it kind of fits in with that. It's like it's back to the putting it in very simple terms, which I love. It's back to the altogether-ness of being in life or being life.
Yeah, being life, not even being in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a tradition that I participated in over probably maybe 6 or 7 years.
And that was before it was cool as well, because it's becoming, going on journeys and everything. It's like,
well, we all think we've invented everything, don't we?
But it's been around. I mean, it's ancient.
Coleridge and all those guys, Wordsworth, they were all hanging out smoking opium and nothing new in the world, maybe. But yeah, I'm a pioneer.
Own it. And there's something, I think there's what I'm fascinated by is that you can't, in a world where Amazon Prime will even deliver. Did you know Amazon Prime even delivers on the day now? You don't have to wait till tomorrow. They'll deliver by 10 p.m. tonight for some things. In a world where we get used to that, it's what you've just shared and talked about. It's almost so simple. I mean, it's not simple. Like, I can imagine staying up there for 2 weeks was one of the hardest freaking things you've ever done, in the sense of like everything it took to experience it.
Well, the thing is that there's sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say the it was simple to, like, it wasn't complicated to do that. You didn't need big tech, or it's this paradox of simple, but we just don't. Yeah, sorry, what were you going to say?
Again, it was possible because of the community I was in. That's what makes it possible. So, I said, each night people would sing up to you. I mean, it's so moving. Yeah. And I get what it's kind of looking and discovering the best of both worlds. The world is opened. Technology has kind of had us utterly new in whom and how we communicate and what's possible. And there's a whole world to discover about all of that, and our relationships and what is actually possible in the world. And then there's okay, well, what about this little piece of the world right here, this little piece of life?
There's something as well. I was talking to, funnily enough, another Lucy Cohen, who set up an accountancy firm in Wales, quite pioneering in it, the way they do accountancy, and very different to what they used to call, I was in networking with them years ago, the men in suits who do accounting. And then Lucy and Sophie came along in their early 20s and just doing things differently and breaking all the rules and all that. And it really worked. And there's lots of people that follow them now and do the same thing. But I was talking to her about, when I went back, I was born in Zimbabwe. And when I went back to Zimbabwe when I was 20, when I went traveling 3 months, I met my dad in Zimbabwe. And did, well, firstly, I experienced it as an adult because we left when I was 4. So I didn't really, there's a level to which it's ingrained, but I couldn't vocalize anything about it. And I went back and I couldn't be with it. I couldn't be with I wanted to go home. I couldn't be with the poverty and the hardness that, most people were dealing with and what they were living with. And it was 20 odd years ago. So tourism was on its way out. I did a canoeing trip down the Zambezi, so canoeing and camping every night, an amazing trip. But it was, all of that stuff was starting to disappear because tourists weren't coming. I mean, when I told people I was going traveling and that I was going to Zimbabwe, they all thought I was mad. I was like, I've got friends there. It's not like, there's a whole world of what we think a country's like and what it's actually like and all of that. That's a different thing. And it gave me a perspective. Anyway, the reason I'm sharing this is it gave me a perspective of how much I have.
Yeah.
And it's still with me today, 20 years on.
Yeah.
When I'm sat here in this room, which is bigger than my flat in London used to be. And my house is everything that it is. And there's just you talking about the gratitude, and there's a gratitude there that I have for everything that I have, because I've seen how other people live and experienced other things. And it was really interesting, something that Lucy said, just to tie in the 3 conversations. She said, yes, but that's relative poverty. It's different. So what we're talking about in the UK is relative poverty. And I thought, that's a really interesting idea. So in the UK, we have relative poverty. And I was like, it's actually, and we discussed it a bit on the podcast, and I'm sure we will again. To me, it wasn't helpful, because telling people that you're in relative poverty, there's still no perspective. There's still no, and your relative poverty is amazing and it still sucks. There's something about experiencing nothing and experiencing weather with no shelter and experiencing hunger with no food, and everything that you were saying about your journey, that we can't fake that. You can't get that level of gratitude, appreciation, perspective sort of without going through something. I think that this is what, and there's no point to what I'm saying. It's just a sharing of like something that I'm really interested in is that it's a bit like we've got to experience what others experience. And we've also, and not even what other people experience, just actually what animals on planet Earth experience without all of the stuff that we have as humans. And it gives us something that I can't even put words to it. I can't put words to it. It's a bit like you said, how do you explain what you went through on the mountain for 2 weeks? It's like you just cannot explain it. And there's a whole world of manufacturing it, also fakes it, trying to fake it, fakes it. It's like, how do you experience that in a really true way? And how do we gain that perspective, that appreciation? And again, it's not, there's something about, it's like, it's not a Pollyanna, I should be grateful. Like you said, people come on your gratitude practice, they're like, yeah, I do a gratitude journey. It's like, it's not that. I don't know where I'm going with this. I guess there's a question of, is it a question? There's something there about how do we experience that when we have all that we have? When, like, no one wants to go and sit out in a thunderstorm. We don't. And yet doing that and experiencing that means appreciating what we have is amazing. Like you said, your friend said, no one's ever been so exuberant about a piece of toast before. It's like, it's something there for me about that's world's changing in its connection and experience. And so I guess what I'm also saying is thank you for sharing that, like sharing the story of the journey that you've been on. It's like, yeah, it's magic to be able to look at an orange or a piece of toast and go, wow. And it's not fake, it's a genuine, like, wow. Yeah, when I started growing vegetables, I had a new appreciation for what it fucking takes. Like, farmers, what they go through to get that carrot on my table.
And then there's the what it takes, and then there's also like the miracle of it. So when you take a seed and put it in a little pot with some soil, and it's tiny. I think my last epiphany was nasturtiums. Which I was growing to eat the leaves and flowers of. It's like amazing. Something so beautiful, so bright orange, bright green, and you can eat it. It's like, So I got these tiny little seeds and watered them. Nothing happened and nothing happened. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, hurry up. I was like, oh, it must be there's something wrong with the seeds. I mean, these were all the thoughts that came through. And then finally, one morning, there's like this tiny little unfurlment beginning to happen. And then in a few days, there are these 2 seed leaves. And that came from something like a bit of like a pinhead. How does that, and I know anybody who's ever grown anything will be like, yeah, I know that. And that's kind of the difference, is actually an access to being present to the miracle of life. And it's like, that still blows my mind.
Yeah, me too.
And it's like, I can look at a twig in the winter on a tree, and nascent inside that, or nascent inside the bud, is the leaf. It's like, and then everyone's favorite, of course, is the caterpillar and the butterfly. It turns into liquid. It goes to liquid before it becomes butterfly. And we don't even, like, scientists can't tell us what that is. You know, we can make replicas, but we're not at the source of life. And there's something about being grateful for life. You know, as very many people have put it, that, you know, here you are with this one precious life. But mostly we don't appreciate life. We don't wake up in the morning and go, yippee, I'm alive. We're like, oh, I wish 10 more minutes, just 10 more minutes. And it really takes something to get, it's kind of finding an access into these worlds. Like, grateful for each other.
Yeah.
Like, what about that? Like, get out of my way. And there's a whole and there's nothing, it's not like it's something like presence. You know, one of my favorite so then the last thing to let you know is that I spent 2 years reading about the wisdom traditions of the world, particularly Buddhism, all of it, Christian, that I've got different teachers and writers whose work touches me, and it's in service of being in life. with others, with or as, like, I don't, it's impossible to articulate, it seems, but so one of my favorite teachers is Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist monk. I think he passed either this year or last year. I think it was this year. And I got this CD, and it's just extraordinary. So it's about the art of flower arranging, and he talks about taking the time that you need. He talks about the person arranging the flowers, and then he says, you know, don't, he doesn't say it like this, but don't criticize the person arranging the flowers. Otherwise, they'll stop arranging the flowers and there will be no harmony in your home. Then he says there's the person arranging the flowers, and then there's the person who's supporting the person arranging the flowers. And he just creates this world.
Yeah.
And then he says, arranging flowers is like arranging space. And it's somehow allowing the space for each person that way, and supporting them, and that way there's harmony in the home. Just like you say, really a simplicity.
Yeah. And it's almost, it's not in one of my standards now, but it's written down as to go in the next book. It's like, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. And this paradox of the simplest stuff is often the hardest thing to do.
Yes.
Like, the simplest thing to do for our health is to drink water and eat vibrant food. And yet it can be the hardest thing. And it's this, I don't know, I guess it's I come to sort of think that life is just one enormous paradox everywhere I look. And the more I'm okay with that, the more okay I am with the world. And like, it's just all a paradox.
Yeah.
That simplicity being hard, and things that are hard actually being really simple. And in a world where there's so much information and so much stuff going on, that, you know, all the cliches, less is more, go slower to go faster. And it takes everything for me to remember that. And the more I practice, it gets easier. But what? So, do you do any practice? So what I'm interested. So, I remember. So I went to church as a. I'll say it how I used to tell the story. How I still tell. I used to get dragged to church when I was a kid. That was my experience of church. And yet I went to Joel Salatin's farm in America, who's one of my favorite livestock farmers that I follow. And I went to do a 2-day trial on his farm for an internship. And they are part of the Baptist church. And I went on a weekend. The days that I happened to go, it was a Sunday. So I experienced what their Sunday was, and I experienced their church and was moved beyond measure. They would call it, I don't know how they'd word it, articulate it, but being moved by God would be how it would occur to them. I know that's how it did occur to them. Their pastor wrote to me even afterwards. And I was, and then I have all this conflict of the if you like, the stories and that stuff. It's like I'm very moved by rituals and the community and the music and the feeding women who have just had a baby for, I think it's 7 weeks. I can't remember. You know, there's just so much. And then there's a whole world where a lot of churches aren't like that, and a lot of, there's a whole world there, isn't there, in any community? Of there's the good stuff, and there's the stuff that works, the stuff that doesn't work, and all of that. And that's kind of, I guess, what I would call me seeking that and wanting that. And not really, it's not quite finding it in the church. And then I go sort of almost kind of creating it without realizing it with all my clients and friends, and ending up with some kind of community where we actually all care about each other. And so what I'm interested in is, what do you do now that has, because you've experienced all of these amazing tribes, traditions, the reading that you've done. What do you do now that works? Like, are you part of something, or do you create it for yourself? Because I'm fascinated by traditions and rituals, and I have this idea that they should be old and then we follow them. But actually, I came across someone a couple of weeks ago at summer camp who creates rituals. I was like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, that's what he does. He teaches people how to create rituals. So I haven't spoken to him more yet. But so how do you do that now with everything, everywhere you've been and all the communities you've been in? And what's your thing?
Well, one thing that I've done is, and continue to do, is share. So I write a weekly blog, and each month there's a theme. So we've just completed September's theme, which is called Living Peace. And every week there's what's called a little weekly practice.
How do people find your blog, before I forget to ask, and then tell us? Where do people find your blog? We'll put it in the comments as well, but if people
on
are listening.
My website.
Okay. What's that? It's
yourspiritualself.co.uk.
Cool.
www first.
Yourspiritualself.co.uk. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then once we have a 1 hour Zoom call and people share. So some people say, I didn't read it. We go, great. Some people say, I read it and this is what showed up, like that. So it's, in a way, I've created a community of people to practice and inquire with. And it's really about keeping present to the universal and being in life in an inquiry versus knowing everything. Or like flatlining. So that's, I've spent the month of September inquiring into what is, or what might, or what constitutes, or what are some of the things that constitutes living peace. And it's a complete joy to me. I love it. And I draw on everything. It's utterly eclectic. So going back to wanting some form of ritual and belonging and way to, putting it badly, praise God. I think we find our own ways. So when I was involved in the Native American church, and in the environmental activism world, pretty much I adhered to the pagan calendar. So being given by the movement of the planets and the seasons. So living from, equinox to solstice to equinox. So I'd have a sense of where I was, given by where the Earth was in relation to the other planets. And then we get together and have parties and celebrate. And I mean, it was wild in the best of ways. And there was something about celebrating the different seasons. And then as my view expanded, it's like somehow, like, I love the seasons, and I love, Harvest Festival, time of plenty, and I love Christmas, time of feasting, and I love the cross quarter. So there's, they're cross quarter days between the equinoxes, and it's, I don't know, it's just like it stopped being my thing. I was more, I was no longer so wedded to outdoor life. Outdoor life as in living outdoors. Which is, just to put it straight, that was what I did. I lived outdoors for about 8 years. And it's extraordinary. Again, that the experience of seeing the full moon rise on the one hand and the setting sun on the other is, or getting up in the morning and there's a dewdrop on every blade of grass in the field, and watching the May blossom come out and seeing the deer. And I mean, it's really a privilege. And there's a quietening that comes with that life. But in terms of the praising the universe or the sacred and the divine in life, I, had a go at different things. So I had a go at Buddhism, and the same thing happened as with Christianity, which is the doctrine got in the way. What there was to believe in, like the bloke in the sky with the beard, or remembering there's 45 days between when you die and when you're reborn in Buddhism. There's like set things that just, however much I wanted to take it to be it wasn't it. So I suppose the very simplest way is in taking time. As you know, I have a beautiful dog called Spotty. And
he's been very quiet today. Not a peep from Spotty.
No, one of his superpowers is lying in.
Nice.
I'm impressed by his capacity to just sleep. I got up, I was on a call at 7:15, I've done whatever I've done, and it's just like, where's Spotty? It's like, oh, lying in, having a sleep. So what a great role model.
He's got it down.
Yeah. So what I've discovered is simply stopping and being in nature. That's the individual ritual. And then my dad is 96 3/4. He's in a care home in Malvern. And on Sunday, I went to see him, and I've got a Fiat 500 convertible, and he's wanted to go out in the car forever, and I've gone, oh, I can't be doing with it. But anyway, I got over myself. I said, Dad, if you want to go in the car, I'll come pick you up. It was a beautiful sunny morning. So we got him down the chairlift, out of the home, across the path into the car, and he pushed the button and the roof went down, and we just went out for a drive through the country. And there's this incredible oak tree, American oak. I can't remember the actual variety, but the leaves are about 10 centimeters.
Wow.
And oak shaped, and just incredible colors, bright yellow. Mostly that's what I remember as the yellow. And so I parked underneath this tree and I said, hey, Dad, look up. And he looked up. And there we were, looking up at these incredible bright yellow leaves against the bright blue sky. And the sun was just coming down and warming us. And it was amazing. And to have both that experience and that intimacy, it was about a minute or 2 minutes. And then Dad started talking about trees and, oh, look at the bark and blah, blah, blah. But we just had that shared moment of being in the wonder of the world. So that's my current practice. I also create myself every morning. So who wakes up isn't the person in front of you now. Who wakes up is the give me just 10 more minutes and all of that. So I create myself, like, who am I? And I have a buddy who I text every morning, and who I am, which is possibility of being happy, accepting, and powerful. And when that doesn't move me anymore, I create something new. And then I guess there's a kind of, I think that's all I want to say about that. And then in terms of community, I don't have any answer for that. So it used to be for me in women's groups. That was where I would participate in ritual.
Yeah.
And in the Native American church, so it was called the Native American Church because that way it wasn't illegal to have the sacrament of peyote. If it wasn't inside of that context, it was a drug. And that was always the context within which I participated. It was so powerful and extraordinary. And I was kind of over taking drugs for the experience of it in that outside of a context. So I think that's I think also anything where, like, I used to sing in choirs. I've just realized I don't do that anymore. But I think that's incredibly uplifting, even if you're not singing to God. There's something about, or the universe, or whatever you want to call that. And there's something about being part of something, all of us together being part of something. When people come together and you're one part of a sound, for example, in a choir.
Yes, very, very powerful. On summer camp, we were all singing, but we were singing to pop songs at the top of our voices. Same thing, like that the singing bringing people together, just magical. And God, universe, whatever, like it's bigger than us. There's something there that becomes more present.
When I was working as a dance movement therapist, I worked with a young woman in a mental health project, and she was on a loop about there was something wrong with her, short version. And I taught this song with a dance, and it takes everything. And afterwards, she said, I didn't think at all about whatever the loop she was on during that time. And it's like there's some part of us that I'm going to go right off piece now. Like,
go for it.
Like migrating animals. It's like there's something that we just can let go into. And then what you look like, or how you sound, or obviously there are people that sing the solos, but the rest of us, it's like you're just part of it. And you're no longer an individual. In fact, maybe you never were, but you're not relating to yourself as you gotta.
That's the difference, isn't it? So there's thinking I'm an individual versus knowing I'm not, because we cannot be an individual. We're never individual. And whilst it's a bit like what you said about you create yourself in the morning. Lots of people, including, we all do it. We create ourselves without realizing it all the time, including I'm on my own, I'm alone, it's only me. And that creating otherwise is so powerful. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I'm more present to ritual and the stuff from church and since having kids, right? Because it's kids and it's like, oh, it's Christmas, oh, it's Easter. And when I was a kid, that had a level of meaning because we were part of the church. So there was a, in Harvest Festival, because we were in a farming community where we went to this church. So it had meaning and depth. Whereas now I've got children and we're not part of a church.
Yeah.
Christmas and Easter still exists, but it's just like this chocolate selling fest that's already started in the shops. What is that? It's fucking October. What is that? Anyway, I digress. It's like what was really helpful then was you were saying about, it's like through your life you've chosen the things that you've had as rituals and actually using the pagan calendar, and that Christmas is about feasting. And because I literally, not last night, the night before, I read Charlie loves Christmas. Loves it. We play Christmas songs all year. He had a Christmas onesie on this morning when he got out of bed. Like, Christmas is an all year thing in our house. So he found this, but we've got loads of books. We always had story time, and he found this book, and he was like, "Mummy, what's this?" And it's a big book with loads and loads of little stories. The last third is Christmas stories. So I was telling him what all the different, there's nursery rhymes in it, and then I said it's Christmas stories. So of course he said,
"Oh, let's have the Christmas ones.
Mummy, we must read the Christmas stories." And in the Christmas stories, there were lots of biblical Christmas stories, including the birth of Jesus, at which point he's going, "What's this?"
Yeah.
And internally I'm going, I don't know how to explain this to a 4-year-old. Like, how do I explain the church, the world, the stories, and so yeah, it got me thinking, because I've got a child literally asking me, going, "Well, what's this? And what does that mean?" And I'm going, gosh, what do I say about the church at this point, and all the great and all the bits that it was really helpful when you said about the doctrine and the things that then just don't sit and can't, I can't align. And what I'm getting from this conversation, which is one of my, I was going to say it's one of my secret reasons for doing a podcast. I'm actually pretty straight about it most of the time.
Yeah.
This stuff these podcasts changed my life, because I'm literally listening to you going, oh, so I could pick and choose. It's almost like we could create our own rituals in this house and create the meaning and create the why and create without just going, it's Christmas time, so we all eat turkey and that's it.
Yeah.
With nothing there. And we all buy lots of presents, but no one's really sure why. And no one in our family actually needs anything, which is another whole hilarious conversation about, like, everyone's like, "What do you want for Christmas?" Nothing. And no one believes me when I say nothing. They're like, "No, but you must want something." I'm like, "No, really, nothing." Although now I'm like, well, you could buy me an apple tree. Well, I'm in the market for a blueberry bush, so there's a whole
Yeah. Good.
But yes, this conversation is very powerful.
And then if you look, we have our you've already created family rituals called reading time. So it is a kind of inherent thing that we do. And the piece that is sometimes neglected is the connection with the universal.
Yeah.
It's something that it's part of why I do the blog. It's part of that inquiry, is to expand our experience of community as a species. I mean, it's kind of a weird way to say it, or I'm not satisfied with how I've said that.
Working title.
Yeah. And when people live in the same place or go to school in the same place, it's like those rituals become like your kids' friends' families, and you will do bonfire night together. Like, why on earth do we celebrate bonfire night? Random, isn't it? But we do, and we love it.
Yeah. Owen is building a huge one at the moment as we speak. Not literally as we speak, but yesterday he was making it bigger. Ready for next month.
Yeah, nothing. It's and that whole experience of not last night, the night before, I went out into the garden and was looking up at the stars. It seems my garden is right under the Milky Way. I don't know if it's possible. That's how it seems. And I saw a shooting star.
Wow.
It was wow. I was like, oh my goodness. And it's somehow, it just like opens things. It's like, I don't have a clue, really. I'm not in control of it. I'm not in charge of it all. I don't have to be. I can hand it across. Thank you, universe. And it's sort of, in terms of personal development and how to have it all and live a great life. It's like you give it to the universe. You say, this is what I'm intending for, and then you act consistent with it. So all of that, the secret and the law of attraction and that whole world, all of that, Lynn McTaggart, if you start reading stuff like that, which is the field that we're, the energetic field we're in. And, yesterday I was having a conversation with some people in the podcast, and we were talking about Dr. I can't remember his name. The Japanese doctor. Do you know that Japanese doctor who did research on water crystals?
Water, yeah.
Yeah, great. And I was suddenly had this, I was like, oh my goodness, we're what, 80% water? So when, I used to have a joke with a friend about having bad thoughts. He had eczema, and he'd go, oh, my eczema, it's so bad. He was kind of, amping it up, and I go, it's because you're having bad thoughts again. But I suddenly had this moment. I was like, I'm 80% water. And then how that showed up is in between frozen and thought at that moment, when you looked at the crystals that have been prayed over or sung about or whatever it was, they formed this beautiful design.
Yeah.
And then when you were, I hate you, water, I don't think it was ever that kind of.
I think they did. I think they sent love and hate. I think they did. I think it was that strong. Yeah.
Great. Well then the
they were
design,
disfigured.
Exactly. The design was gone. I was like,
a mess.
Wow. So the I'd never ever considered the physiological impact of how I am in the world like that. Anyway, there we are, off-piste again.
I was like, oh, we could do another whole podcast on that, couldn't we? With, the levels of sickness in the world and what you've just said. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
When they're communities of people, and that's, they do whatever work they do in the world. And then if you want to, you can join their newsletters and podcasts and send healing energy to blah blah. Which is, what else do? I do that. I send, but I don't know about sending. I speak into being and pray for people's greatest potential to be realized in a good way, like whatever that takes. And actually, even the very simplest of things, to get myself out of the way and listen to another's experience. Like you say on these podcasts, it's kind of opening. And then, one of the most basic things is to look at the difference that you make. So where we look, even though, of course, we know better than to try and improve ourselves, it's always there. And then it's like, wow, what difference do I make in the world? And it takes something to be with that, for you to get that you are working with people and making the difference that you make with them every day, which makes the difference in their families and makes a difference, if you're willing for it, out into society, in the conversations about what's possible, and out into the world.
It's taking everything not to move on. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
That realizing we all matter. Massive.
Yeah. And then, you know, just the very simplest of things, like, you know, there's a mum giving her children their daily food, whatever that is. How touching.
I remember you saying to me, it was a while back now, but I had definitely had Charlie and Rupert. And I remember you saying, you know, children just want to be with you. You can empty the dishwasher together, just let them into your world. And it was miraculous. I mean, I already kind of did that when I wanted to and when it suited me, but it wasn't like a thing that was just all the time. Like, this is our world, and letting them partake. You know, I had this sort of disconnected, sometimes we'll empty the dishwasher, and then we need to do stuff with the kids that's like this formal activity, rather than just being that life is the activity. And game changer. Absolute game changer. And allowing them to do, like, they do it all the time naturally, because kids are great, aren't they? They just want to join in. And I think that's what you reflected to me.
Yeah.
To the point where Charlie this morning was helping me get towels off the radiator to put them in the washing basket to carry them downstairs.
Yeah.
And part of me wanted to just go, oh, this is way too slow. I could have done this already and got the next load in. And that conversation that we had gave me the permission to just enjoy it and get that is activity with kids. So even this morning, you know, just walking down the stairs with a 4-year-old and a basket, and he was determined. Charlie was determined to carry the basket on his own. And I was like, let's do it together. It was a big basket with a lot of towels in it. And then we did it together, and then he loaded up the purple towels, because this morning we washed the purple towels. And then Rupert came in and wanted to press a button. So Charlie organised that they pressed a button each. And it was just, you know, this morning I was with my kids, whereas in the past I'd have been trying to get my kids out the way so I could get the laundry on.
Yeah.
And it just, and it took getting that we matter and getting, and it's almost like we've gone full circle, being present.
Yeah.
When we be present in what there is to do right now, versus get out of my way, I need to put the laundry on. God.
There's something I just remembered about ritual, which is called Rangoli, Rangoli, from memory.
Yeah.
And there's a particular area in India, which I can't tell you where it is. And every morning, the women come out and make these designs out of rice and coloured things, but rice type, it might be coloured rice. And there's a prayer in them. It might be that, you know, good fortune for everyone that crosses the threshold and comes into their house, or whatever it is. And it's a daily activity. And one of the things that I love is patterns. Another of the things I love is patterns, and the making a design out of stuff, like physically manifesting it, and then it can be gone again. I did an arts project with a group of refugee women in Plymouth, and I just said, bring stuff. And we made this incredible collage together. And that's all it was. It was just a pattern. It was like a flower with, you know, little petals in the interstices of the other flower, of the other petals, and shapes. You know, it was simply a pattern. And it was stunning. And it was the same thing as the singing in the choir.
Yeah.
People could do their own little bits, and then we put it all together. It was utterly beautiful. Gasped when they saw it. It was so beautiful. So there's
and there's something in us that if I say to client groups, we're going to do a dream board or something, and there's scissors and glue and like childlike excitement, there's something in us that's like, just, I hadn't connected that until you just said that, with the singing and with the experiencing something bigger. I stalk artists on Instagram who video when they're doing their artwork. I'm just like, oh, it's mesmerizing. And now I'm getting like, oh, maybe that's why there's a connection there to nothing else matters. Like doing a piece of art or partaking in art, or even watching someone making a piece of art.
Yeah.
There's nothing else.
You've reminded me of something else that I was involved in a while back, which was called, or is called, solo theatre. And myself and a friend, Mo Cohen, curiously enough, in a funeral parlour, ran this theatre workshop.
Yeah.
And
where else would you do such a thing? It makes complete sense.
Exactly. And basically, we worked with people to make a solo theatre show about their life, any aspect of their life, whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And then we had a solo festival, and people would invite the people from their life to come and witness or be the audience of that particular show that they'd written.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. So then people became known in the community newly.
Yeah.
And people did extraordinary things.
Yeah.
There was a guy who'd had an affair, and he did his whole show about that. And of course, people in the community know about it.
Yeah.
But it was so brave, so courageous.
Yeah.
Like actually what he was dealing with. And all of them, like however kind of outlandish they were, people had all kinds of stories, from living in the rainforest to, oh my goodness, whatever it was. Let's just keep it safe, keep it confidential, but whatever it was. And then when you watch them, that all of us have had, there's like the commonality of experience regardless of content was what kind of reached through to people. That was quite extraordinary, and kind of a similar thing, but a different form, a different pattern, you could say, of the same thing, of individual to community.
I'm seeing and hearing art and I don't know the word for it, drama, theatre. It's like seeing it in a different way now. I'm irreverent about it, but without knowing why. And now I'm going, oh, there's an access here in partaking in art that is bigger than us.
Yeah. And there's a self-expression. There's a way of saying, if you think about music, there's no words in it. There's patterns in it, sounds and patterns. And yet it moves us mightily. I mean, there were words to songs, so that would be another expression. But it's like it's a way of communicating, I suppose.
In another, because even though there are words in songs, we give them sounds and patterns in the music, don't we? So it's not. It's another.
Yeah, not. I don't. I was just, sorry. Go ahead.
There's depth to it. It's different, isn't it? Than
yeah.
Mm.
And then there's what's popular. You know, all of the rapping that's popular now. All of the spoken word that's popular now. There's a rhythm in and a rhyme and a syntax and a soundscape in that, which may be beyond what the words mean. I don't know. It's not my genre. Happily. You know. Yeah, I think there's something very basic about communicate that we want to communicate our experience. And
connect.
Totally, and connect. Yeah. Sure.
Lucy, we've been going for 2 hours and 25 minutes.
No.
And when I said to you the podcast is 2 to 2.5 hours long, you went, "That's very long." And I said, "It'll go quicker than you think." So I want to ask you how it was. I'm going to smoke my cigarette and ask you, how was it for you, darling?
Well, I'll tell you. Well, it's extraordinary, really, extraordinarily wide-ranging, and then I can hear the constants of it. So the things that I'm interested in, like repeating as we go through. And you know, thank you for the opportunity. It's kind of unusual. It's a bit like traveling when someone says, "Oh, tell me about you," and you kind of go, "Well, I don't know. What do you say?" I suppose now it's like being of an age that I am, having reached that milestone called getting a senior rail card. That is the ritual for turning 60, so you know.
I love it. There's so many rituals that I'd never realized were rituals until today. I can see it now. I can feel it. I'm going to be out in the world. Oh, this is a ritual.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know about that one till I turned 60.
How does it work? How does the ritual of the beings, how do they just send it? Does it just arrive in the post?
Yeah.
Do you get a card saying happy birthday?
It arrives in your purse.
Just like that.
Yeah. Like just like one day it wasn't there, and then you turn 60 and there it is. You're like, how did that? So no, you have to go to the station and provide a photograph and all kinds of things. There's an art to it.
It'll make you jump through hoops.
But you do get well-reduced train fares. I recommend it.
Like 33% off or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's well worth it. Worth it.
My dad had a train. He has a rail card. He's 80 now. That's not true. He's 80 next year. Sorry, Dad, just knocked a year off. And he looks young for his age. And so even only 10 years ago, he was, you know, they didn't believe him. They asked for ID. They thought he was faking it. So there's also a whole world of, well, it's like the opposite end of, you know, getting ID'd.
Yeah. You've got to be old enough. Are you sure you're old enough?
You're old enough.
Yeah. Well, that's a new measure for me.
Humans are hilarious.
Being asked for ID because I look too young. I'm going to go after that one.
I would. I'd go all over that.
Cool.
Oh, Lucy, it's been an absolute pleasure. So we will put in the comments, we will put your phone number and email. We'll put your website.
Yeah.
People can reach out to you. you do. I just very sort of briefly, well, it can be long if you like. I can go all day, but
yeah, I'll go briefly. So the best way to contact me is either by phone, and my number will be in the...
You can say it out loud if you want, for anyone listening who can't be bothered to look at the comments.
Okay.
We're looking at a generation of people who just want it now.
07795 817 935, or email me. So phone or email is the best thing to do.
Brilliant.
And then the offerings that I have currently are the blog, first and foremost. Then also, first and foremost, the one-to-one guided journey. And then there are currently 3 places available. We're running a winter gathering in a beautiful centre in South Devon in the Dartmoor National Park from the 13th to the 16th of December. So if you're interested in that, give me an email or a call. And I think that's it.
And what's the gathering? Now I want to know. I'm like, hang on, gathering?
Gathering?
What is this? I didn't know about this.
Well, there's a river and a fire circle, so there'll definitely be some rituals.
Wow.
And it's a thank you and farewell to 2022, and hello and welcome to 2023. So to complete the year and to create the game for 2023.
I'm trying to stop myself looking at my calendar as I'm like, behave, Alex, you're on a podcast. Wait till it's
I will
finished.
send you the flyer.
Please do.
You can see. Do you want to see Spotty? Can people see this? Do you want to meet Spotty?
Yes, they'll be able to. If they're watching the video recording or they're watching live, they can see Spotty.
This is my superpower, really, the cutest doggy in the world. Hello. Spotty.
He's so big now. He was so tiny when you first got him.
I know. He's such a little dog. Look at that.
He's very handsome.
He's not really that big. It's
like he's a superhero. He's got a whatever it is superheroes have over his eyes.
Yeah. Look, here he is.
Oh,
there's his spots.
There's his spots. No prizes, ladies and gents, for guessing why he's called Spotty.
Yeah.
So cute.
Anyway, he is very, very cute. Oh, and you might be able to see this. Look, he's got a little white Mohican. Do you see that?
He's on brand.
He is.
He's a few decades too late, but he's on brand.
Oh, apparently it's big in the doggy parlor world. That's what
it's in.
Yeah, allegedly. So yeah, I think
brilliant.
That's it.
So people can actually physically come and hang out with you.
Yeah.
In December, they can stalk you on your blog. They can join in on your calls, and they can have a guide. Everyone, I didn't know I was on a guided journey. I highly recommend it. I thought I was just getting coached. I don't have a coach anymore. I have a wise lady guiding me on my journey. I love that. So if anyone would like their journey guided, I can't. And if anyone would like to speak to me about how amazing it is, please do reach out as well. I will wholeheartedly recommend you beyond measure.
Thank you so much.
It really is magical. And your contribution to the world and your very being is, I feel honored to be part of your life. And I'm just beyond appreciative of you spending the time with me in this conversation and trusting me and going, oh, well, yes, okay, let's chat. Let's see where this leads. And there's a whole nother layer, which I feel connected to you and, who you are and where you've come from and what you've done. And you've left me expanded, which is why I love doing this podcast. It's a completely selfish act, this podcast. Anyone listening, just do it for myself. And if you've got value, I really love that.
Yeah. Well, Alex Louise, it's really my honor and privilege to be your guide. And thank you for the difference that you make. And for anybody who works with people, to have the people that you work with thrive in the world is the fulfillment of what we do.
There's no greater
what
gift.
I do. So it's...
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right.
We're going to wrap up. So we're going to go off
Yep.
live. Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you, Lucy. Lots of love.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful onward day.
Yay. Okay. Cheerio. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.